we've seen from a number of studies that kids who are given a false sense of their esteem have more difficulties when a challenge comes along. They quit more easily. They give up. In fact, there's a wonderful scientist called Dweck who's written a book called Mindset. It's a really, really good book if you want to have a look at it. And she first started her research looking at failure and how kids deal with failure. And what she found was really surprising to her, because there were a bunch of kids that she came across who she'd give them something hard. So the typical kid, or many of the kids, she'd give them something hard and then say, okay, so now what kind of puzzle would you like? Would you like one that's more challenging or one that's easier? And her expectation was that the majority of kids would say, give me the easier one, and then she wanted to kind of figure out if they failed, how they did. What she came across were this bunch of kids who said, ooh, give me the harder one. That was really cool. I want to do more. So she then developed this concept of mindset. And she's discovered that not only kids have a particular mindset, but the adults in children's lives have a mindset. So the mindsets are fixed. And that's a mindset of, you know what, you're just like your dad. He was lousy in math. You're going to be lousy in math. So, you know, just take another course. Fixed mindset. The world is against me. I'm never going to do anything. You know, I came here as I'm driving here. The windshield wipers don't work. Everything goes against me. It's not going to work out. You get that sense? Fixed mindset. The other mindset, the one that we want to have as parents and help our kids with, is growth mindset. Growth mindset. And that's the mindset that says, this was tough, but you know what? What did I learn from this? I can do this differently next time. Or the mindset that says, okay, so I'm in this tough situation here. I'm, driving from Toronto. The traffic's terrible. How am I going to get to the talk on time? Well, if I'm late, I can go, oh my God, it's so terrible. It's so unprofessional. I'm always late. What can I do? Or I can say, well, you know what? I've learned that if you're going from Hamilton to Toronto, you need 4 frickin' hours instead of 45 minutes. You start to say, what part is mine? What part is other people? And what part is out of my control? Rather than, oh my God, I'll never be able to do this. So the growth mindset is the mindset that we want to encourage in our children. What does it mean? It means, one, we want to be careful with praise. Why? Because when you praise your kids and it's not meaningful, then they start to look for the praise rather than doing it for the intrinsic, the inside for wanting to do it. An example, a study done in Toronto about generosity. So if you reward kids for being generous, like for sharing their lunch with somebody, if you reward them for doing that, do you think those kids will continue to be more generous or less generous? I've kind of given it away already, right? So if you reward kids for being generous, the studies actually show they become less generous. Why? Because they start looking around to see, is anybody seeing me do this nice thing? Rather than having the expectation in your classroom or wherever that we share. So when we overly praise our kids, they get a false sense of how good they are. And that self-esteem can take away from what's called self-efficacy. So we need to help our kids learn better what they can do, what they can dream about, and less about making them feel good about what they've done. Right? Is this making sense? So if we want kids to be facing a challenge, we want them to be able to have an inside feeling, I can do this. There are people who can support me. And there's no problem so big that me and my family can't work through and solve. So as parents, we want to be focusing on not good job, but wow, tell me, what do you think of that? So when the kid comes off and they've just scored a goal, oh, wow, you're going to go to the NHL. So you don't say that kind of thing. You say, wow, how did that feel? What'd you do? Do you see the difference? It's a bit of a hard shift. What is that doing? In terms of that lizard brain, we will have the science that shows when the child is recognizing what they have accomplished, they are better able to bring in that thinking brain when the lizard brain gets fired later. So, telling kids that they're so smart, oh my God, you're so smart, diminishes kids' risk-taking. Telling kids, wow, you know how to work hard, increases their creativity. Isn't this sounding like backwards? Isn't this kind of opposite to what we've all learned or what we see everywhere? So I want some time for questions, but there's one, yeah.
Can you just repeat that last bit that you said about the comparison? If I tell them...
Okay, so if you tell them they're really smart, right? So if you tell them they're really smart, it diminishes creativity because, oh my God, what happens if I'm not as smart next time? If you say, wow, you are a hard worker, they are much more likely to continue to work hard. Right? So imagine you've done really well. Okay, or imagine, so I can identify with this. So I get introduced and somebody says, oh, she's the best speaker I've ever heard. What goes through my head? What happens if I screw up? You're setting them up for you're so smart. Oh, I have to prove to Dad that I'm smart. Whereas hard work, you are a hard worker. Boy, look how long you stuck to that math question. Wow, tell me. You are building a different part of their brain. You're focusing on their internal development. So what is the area of the brain that all of this has to do with? So here we've got the emotional brain, great brain. I love the emotional brain. It keeps me in business. But what we want, what we see the development of, is this thinking brain. And when we have, when our kids reach and come across tough situations, we want them to be able to, in their head, not just have their emotional brain reacting, but be able to access problem solving. Be able to say, you know what, this really sucks right now, but it gets over better with time. And I found that when I listen to music, that really helps soothe me. Right? This concept of self-regulation. But a big part of that is developing some of the thinking skills called executive function. We are working with our little toddlers so that they can learn that when they wait, they can have something more. So executive function, you sure do need it to do well in school. It has to do with inhibiting, pausing when you really want something, right? So here you are in a classroom. What do you have to do? Well, if you're in grade 3 or 4, you have to be able to sit at a desk and listen and work. If you don't have inhibition control, you're going to be up and down and all over the place, and you're going to be sent to me for ADHD. You need to be able to inhibit your impulses, right? You also need to be able to keep in mind what you're working on. So I don't know about any of you, but sometimes I'm going up the stairs and I don't know, am I going up the stairs or am I going down the stairs? You know, that working memory. So you need to keep in mind, why am I learning this? Why am I doing this, right? As you're asking your kids to clear the table and to load the dishes, why are we asking them to do that? not to make life easier for us, but for them to know that as a family we function better when there's a clear space and we can make the next meal. The working memory. And then the last part is cognitive flexibility. So cognitive flexibility is about being able to come up with a solution. Cognitive flexibility is, I heard just a story today where there's a young fellow who is being enticed by gang members to come on in and do this. And he doesn't want to be engaged in this. This is a kid in Regent Park. He doesn't want to be engaged in this. So he's busy texting, right? Cognitive flexibility, coming up with a solution. So he gets busy texting, and he's texting his mum. But they think he's texting some chickie, right? He's texting his mum, and he says, no, listen, I'm busy right now, and he's texting away. And then he gets the phone to ring, and he goes, I don't want to come home. What the? Said, my mother, I have to go. He came up with a plan. He came up with a solution in a very awkward situation. We want our kids to have those kinds of skills, right? Coming up with alternative solutions, problem solving.